All right, guys, welcome to week 2 of this virtual learning. Right now I'm going to go through just a couple of the problems off of your week 2 algebra review assignment in ALEX. I know this is something you guys did and should have done a lot of last year in Algebra 1, but it has been a while since we've done some of these things. So I'm going to kind of skip the first few, which are a little bit simpler. But remember, those of you that have used ALEX before, or those of you that haven't, I just want to point out a few things. Over here on the right-hand side, you guys should have access to an explanation that walks you through one of these problems. And you also have an example that goes through and a message center where I don't really know where those messages go, so it's probably not the best way to contact your teacher, but it is a way that we can see kind of what you're doing. So if you click on these, it walks you through your example or a similar example and kind of shows you the different steps through there. Your explanation, you lose your attempt because it actually explains that exact problem and then it'll give you a new one that's similar to that. You don't get any penalties for using those. Those are all tools that are there to help. But I do want to go through a couple of these just because they're a little bit more complex than your basic solving equations and to make sure that you guys have the chance to kind of see my way through it. Now remember, when you guys are doing your homework, you can't just copy down the things that I'm doing because your questions will have different numbers, different variables, but they're going to have the same kind of process. This first one I'm going to do here is number 6. So we have 2 parentheses times 3y plus 8 equals 40. Now, some of you, your first step is going to be to distribute the 2. What I look for is, can I take this number and can I divide 40 by this number over here? Because if I can, then that's going to be less steps than distributing. So I'm going to divide both of these sides by 2 because 40 is divisible by 2. So then what happens is those go away and I'm left with a 3y plus 8 equals 20. So remember, anything divided by itself is 1, and anything times 1 is just itself, which is why I'm left with just the 3y plus 8. And then from here, I have a simple linear equation, so I can subtract 8 from both sides. Remember, what we do to one side of the equal sign, we have to do to the other. So those will go away, and then I have my 3y equals 12. Now I divide both sides by 3 because division is the opposite of multiplication. And my 3's will cancel out, so I have y equals 4. So there would be, my simplified answer. All right, the other one that, if I erase these here, that we'll look at is going to be number 8. So let that load while I erase all this. All right, so this one here, I have 2 occurrences of that variable that are on the same side of the equal sign. So when I go to set this one up, I have negative 28 equals 2y plus 8 minus 5y. My first step is going to be to combine my y terms. So this here, remember, I have a positive 2y, and then this here, this negative 5y, it's going to hold that sign in front of it. So I have 2y minus 5y. So when I go to rewrite this, I have negative 28 equals 8 minus 3y, because 2 minus 5 would be a negative 3. From here, I am going to then try to isolate this y, so I had to get rid of the 8 first, so minus 8 on both sides. So those will go away, and this side I'm left with the negative 3y. Now negative 28 minus 8 will be negative 36. And then to get y by itself, I have to divide both sides by negative 3. So negative times a negative, this side, they cancel out. So y is now negative divided by a negative is a positive. So 36 divided by 3 is 12. And there's my answer for that one. Okay, the next three that we're going to go into are a little bit more complex, so we'll go to number 11. We'll do 11, 12, and 13. So this one here, I've got two occurrences of that variable on the same side, but one of them is inside parentheses. So this one's a little bit different than the other one that we did with parentheses because I can't divide out that 2 because I have other things going on that side of the equal sign. So for this one here, I am going to distribute this 2 first, and then I can go and combine my like terms before I start solving. So 2 times w is a positive 2w. Now positive 2 times negative 8 would be negative 16. So then I can combine these terms here. So negative 1 equals negative 7w plus 2w is a negative 5w minus 16. So now I have a linear equation. I can start simplifying a little bit easier. This is my two-step equation, so I'm going to add 16 to both sides. So those will cancel out, and I have 15 equals negative 5w, and divide both sides by negative 5 because those will cancel out. So w equals negative 3. Positive divided by negative gives you a negative. So then you could type your answer in there. All right, so number 12, and again, yours are going to be slightly different, but you should be able to use this kind of as a guide. So number 12, we've got two occurrences of that variable that we're trying to solve for. They're on different sides of the equal sign, and then one of them is actually inside parentheses. But again, I can't just divide this by negative 5 because those aren't easily divisible by 5. It would just make it more messy. So we're going to do negative 8w minus 13 equals negative 5 times w plus 5. So I'm going to kind of take the same approach that I did on number 11, and I'm going to distribute this negative 5. So I'm not going to touch this side of the equal sign yet. I have negative 5 times w, which gives me negative 5w. Negative 5 times positive 5 will give me a negative 25. Now, some of you might be at a place now where you're saying, okay, I can do two steps at once. So I'm going to take this negative 8w, and I'm going to cancel it out by adding 8w. And I'm going to do that to both sides. Now the other thing I'm going to do, because if I have my w's over here, I need to get rid of this 25, so I can add 25. Now those of you that don't feel like you can do two steps at the same time, that's fine. You could do these in two separate steps, but that cancels out my 25s and it cancels out my 8w's. So I have 25 minus 13 or negative 13 plus 25. They mean the same thing. So this side is 12 equals 8w minus 5w, which would be 3w. And then I can divide both sides by 3, and w would equal 4. Okay, so again, we're going to distribute so that we can get our w outside of those parentheses. We have to get all our w's to the same side, and then we can start isolating the w. And the last question you guys have here, number 13. Okay, we've got 3 different occurrences of the variable. So we're kind of taking all the pieces that we've done and we're combining them all together. So we've got 3 different occurrences of the variable, some inside of parentheses, some out, and on both sides of the equal sign. So what we're going to do before we start solving for x is we're going to simplify as much as we can. So I have negative 3 times negative 6x plus 8 minus 6x equals 3 times x minus 3 minus 9. Okay, so following the pattern that we took before, we're going to go ahead and distribute so that we can get these x's out of the parentheses. for those of you that have noticed something different about a lot of these numbers, we'll go back and do it a second way afterwards. But this is probably going to be the one that follows the pattern we've been working on. So negative 3 times negative 6 will give us a positive 18x. Negative 3 times positive 8 would give us a negative 24. Minus 6x equals, then I'm going to distribute this 3, so I'll have 3x minus 9 minus 9. If I bring that other 9, negative 9 in. So on this side here, I'm going to go ahead and combine my like terms. So I have 18x minus 6x, which gives me 12x. And then I keep my negative 24. And then here I have a 3x. And negative 9 minus 9 is negative 18. From here, I'm going to go ahead and subtract my 3x so that I can get my x's on the same side. You could do minus 12x to both sides, but I'd like to try to keep my coefficient for my x value positive if I have the choice, which is why I chose to subtract the 3x, because then this stays a positive 9. So 9x minus 24 equals negative 18. From here, I have to add 24 to both sides, which leaves me with 9x equals 6. So I ended up with a fraction. I get x equals 6/9. Now, once my answer is simple as possible, so I have to reduce this to 2/3. Okay, now we ended up getting some bigger numbers than we've had with some of our other problems here, just because we distributed with some pretty big numbers. So if I look back at this original problem I have up here, some of you might have noticed that my coefficients and all of these pieces here are all divisible by 3. So I could divide the whole equation by 3, which means this would go away, and I would have just a negative 6x plus 8 minus, so negative 6 divided by 3 would be 2x, and then equals x minus 3 minus 3. Hope I forgot to close my parentheses here. So now I can distribute this negative sign, so I have 6x minus 8 minus 2x equals x minus 3 would be negative 6. I can combine over here, so 6x minus 2x would be 4x minus 8 equals x minus 6, because I didn't do anything to that side yet. I can subtract my x from both sides and add, my 8 to both sides. So those go away and those go away, so I'm left with 3x equals 2. And then you can divide both sides by 3 so that you get x equals 2/3. Okay, so with a lot of these, we have some multiple ways to solve them as long as we're following those rules that are in the reference sheet that Ms. Gonzalez made for you guys. If you're still struggling, make sure that you're reaching out to your teacher, which is why we don't want to wait till the last minute on this stuff.